Hey guys, how y'all doing? Welcome to another episode of Hockey on the Spot with Brandon Barenfeld. I'm Brandon Barenfeld. Thank y'all for joining me tonight. This is episode 157 of Hockey on the Spot, and for today we're going to continue with the NHL's 30 teams in 30 days. And for today, we're going to talk about the Calgary Flames. And for the Calgary Flames, it was yet another dismal season for the Calgary Flames. Not as bad as, not as bad as it was last year, or actually kind of was worse than last year, but there were a lot of positives to look upon this year. Even though the team did not play well as a whole, they did fight to the bitter end last year. They had a lot of great individual performances from players. Yuri Hudler was their top scoring forward. Mark Giordano had a career year. We got to see early growth from forward Sean Monahan, their 6th overall pick from the 2013 NHL entry draft. Nobody expected him to come in and play as an 18-year-old. Nobody thought he was ready to play as an 18-year-old, but they pretty much didn't have a choice, and he really shined, scoring 22 goals and scoring 39 points. He was among the talks for being a Calder Trophy finalist, but there were a lot of positives there. Not to mention, the Calgary Flames have a deep prospect pool in place, ready to go whenever the time comes. So, a lot of positives to look upon for Calgary last year, from an individual standpoint. From a team aspect, they once again found themselves out of the playoffs as expected by everyone, including the Flames themselves. But they didn't do as bad as a lot of people thought they were going to do. I personally thought that they were going to be the worst team in the NHL last year, but they weren't. The Edmonton Oilers finished with a worse record than them, and as did the Buffalo Sabres and the Florida Panthers. But they still were among the worst teams and had the 4th overall pick in the draft this past year. Their overall record last year, 35-40-7, only good enough for 77 points, only good enough for 6th in the Pacific Division, and only good enough for 13th in the Western Conference. They did not qualify for the playoffs last year, as expected. But again, it was the first step of a rebuilding phase. They knew they were going to be going through a rebuilding year, and now it's time to take it to the next step. So a lot of positives to look upon from last year, even though they didn't make it. And that included being a tough team to play against in games. Even though and one will probably tell you that if they had a little bit more on the way of the talent side, they probably would have been a much better team than they were last year, because they were a tough team to play against. They did go and crash the net game in and game out. They were physical. They did a little bit of everything last year. They just didn't have the talent. They didn't have the growth. They didn't have the experience. Last year, they tied an NHL record for most one-goal games in a season with 49 one-goal games. That ties an all-time record. I'm not sure who the other record holder is. May have actually been the Anaheim Ducks from 2001-2002. I'll have to look that up at some point. But ultimately, the Flames did tie that record, and so now they know what they needed. They knew what they needed to do going into the offseason. They knew what changes needed to be made, and so they set out to make changes. And it all started with the 4th overall pick in the draft, which they used to select centerman Sam Bennett from the Kingston Frontenacs, who actually finished number 1 in the final rankings. And so at one point, a lot of people projected that he could have potentially been the first overall pick. But the only reason he wasn't was because he's probably not ready to play as an 18-year-old. He's going to go into camp and have a chance to try, but more likely than not, the expectation is that he'll be sent down to play one final season with the Kingston Frontenacs before joining the team in 2015-2016 as a 19-year-old. So, but Sam Bennett, pretty much an all-around player. He scores goals, he makes plays, he's got great skating ability, great set of hands. But can also play the defensive side of the puck. He can hit you, he blocks shots. Makes smart defensive plays. He's a very smart player. And when he scores, and another way he'll score goals is he'll go to the dirty areas of the crease. Kind of like the same exact player that David Gilmour was, Doug Gilmour was as a player. David Gilmour, wow. Ugh. That's the guitarist for Pink Floyd. But Doug Gilmour, Dougie Gilmour, mostly known for his playmaking abilities, just like Sam Bennett, but a hard-working player, which is what Sam Bennett is. He wears number 93 in respect for Doug Gilmour. That was his favorite player growing up. So yeah, just a lot of reasons why this kid could have been the number 1 overall pick. But again, he's probably not ready to make it this year, but he's definitely going to battle for the opportunity. The Flames also made a trade at the draft on the following day of the draft, and that would be their first move of the offseason. They went on to acquire forward Brandon Bolig from the Chicago Blackhawks in exchange for a draft pick. Brandon Bolig, he's a fourth-line player. We all know that. He plays the left wing side, but he actually scored a decent amount last year. Scored more than the average fourth-liner last year. 7 goals, 7 assists, and 14 points in a full 82-game season. And through 15 games in the playoffs, he had an assist as well. He was a minus player, -1 in the regular season and -6 in the playoffs, while he had 92 penalty minutes in the regular season and 16 penalty minutes in the playoffs. But he showed some offensive flair with 109 shots on goal during the regular season. He only had 8 during the playoffs. But Brandon Bolig, he is 27 years of age. He'll be 28 on January 31st. So he's not the youngest guy in the league, but he's big, 6'2", 223 pounds. He can actually skate decently enough for a fourth-line player. But this is a guy who hits and fights. That's what he's mostly known for. He'll chip in a goal every now and then, but this guy is a fighter. That's what he is, and he'll really help give the Flames a little bit more of an edge. And maybe even some playoff experience, because he did go to the Western Conference Finals. So I like that move by the Flames. Brandon Bolig's a good player, so he'll help them out. Other than that, after that, they're pretty much their real offseason kind of kicked in after that. And it started out by shedding the pieces that they knew were not going to become significant parts of this team, such as goaltender Joey McDonald, who stepped in quite a bit last year. He went on to sign with the Montreal Canadiens. They let defenseman Shane O'Brien go. He is still unsigned by any team, but the Flames are not bringing him back. Defenseman Chris Butler, he was good for them over the last couple of years, but not great. Not the greatest player. He's nothing more than a bottom pair defenseman. He went on to sign with the St. Louis Blues. He adds depth to their blue line. Defenseman Derek Smith is also gone. He's still a bit out there as a free agent, but he will not be back in Calgary. Uh, and then they also let go of left winger TJ Gagliardi. He was a major disappointment. They expected much more from him when they acquired him from the San Jose Sharks. He went on to sign a 1-year deal with the Winnipeg Jets. He'll get an opportunity there. And then they also lost center Blair Jones. He went to the Philadelphia Flyers, and center Ben Street, who went to the Colorado Avalanche. But the biggest loss for the Calgary Flames this offseason was the loss of their leading goal scorer last year, Mike Camilleri. It was pretty much a well-known fact that Camilleri was not going to be back with the Flames. However, it's still a big loss nonetheless, and he was one of the big free agent forwards out on the market. And because he did lead the Flames with 26 goals. He did lead the Flames with 26 goals, not to mention he's a guy who could play wing or center. He prefers the left wing side, but has been a center before and has been really good in the face-off circle. He went on to sign a big 5-year, $25 million contract with the New Jersey Devils. So he'll really help out the Devils and boost their offense. He was my number 5 free agent signing of the offseason, for those of you who did not watch that video. But yes, that is the Flames' biggest loss this offseason. Mike Camilleri going to the New Jersey Devils. And again, he led the Flames with 26 goals last year on a team that finished 23rd in the league in goal scoring, as well as 24th in the league on the power play. So their goals for was not very good, and their power play wasn't very good. Their power play percentage was 15.7, and their goals for percentage was 2.46. So not a good season offensively for the Flames. So to lose your leading goal scorer after not even having a good offense to start with, that's pretty big blow, even though the Flames were not going to bring him back anyway. As far as their team defensively was concerned, they were 24th in the league in goals against with a 290 goals against, 290 goals against, and their penalty kill from last year was 18th in the league, tied with the Carolina Hurricanes for 17th at 81.7. So their penalty kill was probably the best part of their team last year. It wasn't the best, obviously. It was in the bottom 15, but it was still in that middle range. It was okay, not great. The one positive about Calgary's team last year is that they didn't really take a lot of penalties last year. 10.5 penalty minutes per game. That was their average. Their average was a 10.5 penalty minute percentage. Average penalty minutes per game. So they were the 13th least penalized team in the league, which is in the top 15. Obviously. So, but in a sense, that also tells you that they maybe weren't physical enough. And so that's why they went and got Brandon Bollig to help them out, get them to be a little bit stronger of a team. But the main part of but really now the key pieces of their team was to get themselves better offensively after the loss of Mike Camilleri, and defensively, as the Flames were the fifth worst team in the league in plus-minus, a minus 32 on the season for the Flames last year. So it was not a good year for the Flames as far as a team effort goes. It was only a good year for them in the individual perspective. So a lot of what they did this year was to get stronger, more defensive, and help out their offense. And maybe not replicate what Mike Camilleri brought as far as offense, but at least stabilize their offense a little bit. As I mentioned before, they get a little bit stronger with the acquisition of Brandon Bollig from the Chicago Blackhawks. They still have forward Lance Bolma as a restricted free agent. They'll definitely get him signed because he last year proved to be a valuable part of their fourth line. He's going to be a really valuable depth player in this league. I can tell you that much right now. He skates well. Very fast skater for his position, actually. He can play center or wing. He's 24 years of age, so he's still young. Won't be 25 until March. Last year, he had a good year through 78 games, 5 goals, 10 assists, and 15 points, a -4 rating, 41 penalty minutes, and 82 shots on goal. Those penalty minutes are going to go up. Those penalty minutes are expected to go up once he solidifies his place at the National Hockey League level. He's 6'1", 210 pounds, so he's got some size. He's going to be a good player. The Provost, Alberta native is going to be a good player for the Flames, so they'll definitely get him signed. As far as the additions go, other than Brandon Bollig, we mentioned they brought him in from the Chicago Blackhawks to help them out in the physicality department. They then brought in to help out in the scoring department. They brought in forward Mason Raymond. He's coming over from the Toronto Maple Leafs. Had a really good year for the Maple Leafs last year, so kind of surprising to me that they didn't re-sign him. He played all 82 games and had kind of a comeback year in a sense after being way off the last few years. The last 3 years, really. And last year was his best year since 2009-10. 19 goals, 26 assists, and 45 points. Only 22 penalty minutes and 178 shots on goal. The only downside about him last year is that he was a -6. So, wasn't a very good as far as analytics are concerned. Not a very good analytics type player, but when he does possess the puck, he's got great hands, great speed, can play a fancier, has a fancier way of possessing the puck. He's really good, crafty. He's 28 years of age, though. He'll be 29 September 17th, but he'll be a good addition for the Flames. He'll help them out in the scoring department and give them some more depth on the wing. They also signed forward Devin Setaguchi. He's coming over from the Winnipeg Jets. This was the Flames' most recent signing, though. And they really signed him more or less because of the fact that they were weak on the right wing side and they needed a true right winger, a true right-handed shot. They get that now with Devin Setaguchi. Last couple of years, realistically speaking, he has really not been the same Devin Setaguchi since he left the San Jose Sharks. When he was with the Minnesota Wild, he really didn't put up great numbers in the 2 years he spent there. And last year with the Jets, through 75 games, only 11 goals, 16 assists, and 27 points. A -7 rating, 22 penalty minutes, and 129 shots on goal. So, he hasn't been the same player since the 2008-2009 season. His sophomore year was the best season of his National Hockey League career. He's 27 now, so he's in his prime. He'll be 28 on January 1st. And hopefully playing with the Flames could help him get his offense back up because he has not been the same. Hopefully, maybe trying to see some time on the second line will hopefully help out Devin Setaguchi and help him get his career back in shape. He was their most recent signing, and they only signed him to a 1-year deal. So, we'll see how it goes for for him and the Flames. So, Mason Raymond and Devin Setaguchi were pretty much added to combined fill Mike Camilleri's role. They're not going to be able to do it individually. They're going to have to work together. They both add scoring and depth to this team. Mason Raymond's probably not going to be on the top 6. He'll probably be on the third line, but he'll add some offense on that third line for sure. They also needed to get better defensively. to get better defensively and to get a little more physical, they added 32-year-old defenseman Derek Engelland. He's coming over from the Pittsburgh Penguins. He's a right-handed shutdown defenseman. Last season wasn't necessarily the best year for Derek Engelland. Although he did have a career-high 6 goals last year. He had through 56 games played, a career-high 6 goals. He had 6 assists, 12 points, a -6, which is a career low for him. 58 penalty minutes and 59 shots on goal. And he did not play a single game in the playoffs. He did not play a single game in the playoffs. However, this is one of those situations where you like the player going there, but you do not like the contract. From a contract standpoint, this was considered to be one of the worst signings of the offseason. So, Derek Engelland, one of the most overpaid defensemen in the game this season. He was signed to 3 years, and he was given a lot of money as well. So he's really going to have to play well. Considering this is a guy who probably isn't going to even play above the bottom pair. He's a bottom pair defenseman. He'll man the right side, and he's a bottom pair defenseman. That's what he is. So, not a good signing as far as the contract goes, but a very good signing as far as the player is concerned. So he'll help them out defensively. He'll block shots. He'll stand up the best players in the neutral zone. But he's a pure shutdown defenseman. He doesn't do anything else. So pretty interesting signing for sure. But that's the signing of Derek Engelland. But probably the biggest signing for the Flames this year came in goal. That was another area where the Flames really struggled last year. Last year, Kari Ramo acted as the starter for the Flames. Rito Berra and Joey McDonald pretty much split duty as the backup goaltender up until Rito Berra was up to the trade deadline where he was traded to the Colorado Avalanche. He was then signed by the Avalanche. So they need to add stability in goal. They have Kari Ramos still. He's going to be back this year. But the other signing they made was that they added goaltender Jonas Hiller. He's coming over from the Anaheim Ducks. They signed him to a 2-year deal. For Jonas Hiller, it was a very interesting year last year for Jonas Hiller with the Anaheim Ducks. He's 32 years of age. He'll be 33 on February 12th. He's undrafted, 6'2", 192 pounds, a rare right-handed goaltender. One will tell you that last year was his career year, but others will tell you differently. At times, there were points in the season where he looked like the best goaltender in the game. There were also points in the season where he looked like the worst. He was very inconsistent last year. Through 50 games, he had a very good record. Through 50 games last year, 29 wins, 13 losses, and 7 overtime losses with 5 shutouts. That's an overall 29-20 record. And he also had a 248 goals against average and a 911 save percentage through 2,909 minutes of play. And this was during the regular season. Jonas Hiller, let's talk about his season last year. The good aspect of his season last year was that he put himself on pace to an NHL record. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Jonas Hiller, from a personal standpoint, had a 14-game winning streak going midway through the season. This went through pretty much all of December and the beginning of the midway point of January. So it was a very good year for Jonas Hiller from that aspect. He came this close to setting an NHL record for most consecutive wins by one goaltender. He also allowed the Ducks brought the Ducks on a couple of winning streaks last year, or helped the Ducks to a couple win streaks last year. They set a franchise record 10-game winning streak last year. Great moment for them, for the team. Jonas Hiller himself was just brilliant through that point of the season. But then after that long win streak, he struggled. He started losing games, and he ended up losing a lot of games. After that win streak, he only managed to get six wins total. It was so bad that he also lost his starting job in the playoffs. He lost his starting job to Frederik Andersen and even John Gibson at points. Though Jonas Hiller did did win the series for the Ducks against the Dallas Stars in the first round. Game number 6, Frederik Andersen gets pulled. Jonas Hiller comes in, makes 12 saves on all 12 shots, and the Ducks come back to win that game 5-4 in overtime. Jonas Hiller got the win in that game, and he also got a win that one will tell you he maybe didn't earn, and that was in game number 3 against the Los Angeles Kings in LA. Frederik Andersen got hurt in the game, and he came in and made 8 saves on 7 saves on 8 shots. But he was on the ice for the game-winning goal, and therefore he was rewarded with the win, not Frederik Andersen. But he lost his starting job in the playoffs. So the Ducks, he pretty much knew his Anaheim Ducks career was over, and the Ducks were not willing to bring him back. And he didn't take it well with the media at first. There were reports of him totally bashing the Ducks, as well as the San Jose Sharks minorly. At one point during the offseason, he was really upset at the Ducks. Pretty much a sign that he lost all respect for the team. But now he gets a chance in Calgary to win back the starting job. He hasn't solidified the starting position in Calgary. He's going to battle Kari Ramo for the honor. Jonas Hiller also represented Team Switzerland in the Olympics last year. He was their starting goaltender, and he actually had a really good tournament. He was Switzerland's best player. Switzerland just couldn't score in the tournament last year, which is why they were eliminated so early in the tournament. So, what Jonas Hiller brings to the table, the one thing that cannot be argued when it comes to Jonas Hiller, no goaltender has a better glove save than Jonas Hiller. He has the flashiest glove save in the league. He just absolutely snags that puck out of the air, and there's no denying that. Now, Jonas Hiller did have a little bit of a health problem this off-season, but the good news for the Flames is that he's overcome that, and he'll be ready for the start of training camp. And the other good news for the Flames this offseason, and another big addition for the Flames this offseason that I forgot to mention, is that they brought in a new general manager, Brad Treliving, who really is helping the team to continue its rebuilding process. Jay Feaster is no longer the GM of the Calgary Flames. Brad Treliving, who I believe was their assistant GM originally, became their full-on general manager, and he made all these signings and acquisitions. Jonas Hiller, again, probably considerably the biggest one. Just when he's on his game, very athletic goaltender, very tough to beat down low, and nearly impossible to defeat on the glove side. You have to beat him blocker side. So he'll solidify the Flames' goaltending and make an interesting choice for the Flames as far as who to start. Kari Ramo or Jonas Hiller, they're going to battle for the starting job. Which now takes us to some of the big questions for the Flames last year. Which takes us to some of the big questions for the Flames this year. And probably the most important question of all, can the Flames take positive steps forward? Remember, they finished 27th in the NHL standings last season with 77 points. But, again, they tied the NHL record for games decided by one goal with 49. He's not... But, again, as far as what to expect next season, the success probably won't come through winning games. The success is probably going to come from the individual standpoint. Players getting better, maybe working on their team game, and that's what's going to make it a successful season for the Flames. They are going in the right direction with this rebuild, and they're actually going in a faster direction. As far as right now is concerned, they're probably going in a faster direction than their arch rivals, the Edmonton Oilers. So that's good news for if you're the Flames, and if you love if you're a passionate Flames fan, you definitely want to get to the playoffs before the Oilers do. Whether it's actually going to happen remains to be seen, because the Oilers built their team really good, are continuing to build their team really well. So, and the Flames only started their rebuild last season when they should have. When one could argue that they should have started it a couple seasons ago. So we'll see. How will Calgary's new front office function during the season? As I mentioned before, Jay Feaster is gone, and also former assistant GM John Weisbrod were let go in mid-December. President of Hockey Operations Brian Burke named Treliving the new GM in late April. So Treliving has been with the team for a bit now. He was there for the draft. And his new assistants were Craig Conroy and Brad Pascal, who was a former Hockey Canada executive. He hired them prior to the NHL draft, so the front office is looking really good for the Flames right now. Can Mark Giordano replicate his performance from last season? He's 30 years of age, and it was his 7th season last year. He'll be 31 on October 3rd. So he's still relatively young, got a couple of years left in his prime. But last year, there is no doubt about it, was his best year. For a team that was very bad defensively, Mark Giordano was a major upside for them last year. He was a plus 12 last year. And through 64 games played, 14 goals, 33 assists, and 47 points, and 180 shots on goal, while only obtaining 63 penalty minutes while serving as the team's captain last year. He also had a career-high 7 power play goals and a career-high 2 game-winning goals. So despite the fact that he missed 18 games with a broken ankle sustained during the opening month of the season, he really he really stepped up, and he stepped up big. Only Erik Karlsson of the Ottawa Senators and Duncan Keith of the Chicago Blackhawks had more points per game than Giordano. And only 9 saw more ice time per game than Giordano, and among those, only 3 had a better plus-minus. He also, there was another interesting statistic about Giordano. He had one of the best Corsi for percentages relative to his team's average at even strength while facing tough competition end zone start assignments. So, Mark Giordano has really proven his value for this team, and he really has shown his commitment to this team. He is the best defenseman on their team, and he is their core. He is their core defenseman. He makes up a part of their core, and he's really going to be a key part of helping this team grow and develop into what they hope to become in the future, a Stanley Cup contender. He's a good leader on the ice, and he's very deserving of the captaincy. Which prospects will be ready to contribute? We all know about last 18-year-old Sean Monahan and the way he surprised everyone and came into the roster out of training camp. He's going to be 19 after the season starts. He'll be 19 on October 12th, and he is just going to get better and better. So assuming he doesn't have go through the sophomore jinx. And obviously they also have Sam Bennett, their fourth overall pick from this past year's draft. But another prospect that we haven't talked about, who played in the Flames' final game of the season last year and scored a goal and scored his first NHL goal in that game, was the reigning Hobey Baker Award winner, Johnny Gaudreau. Johnny Gaudreau, born in the Salem, New Jersey native, a key member of the Team USA during the 2013 World Junior Championships, when he had 7 goals and 2 assists in 9 games. 7 goals, 2 assists, 9 points through 7 games, and a +2 rating. He was just so good in college for the Boston College Eagles, playing alongside fellow prospect Bill Arnold and former Blackhawks prospect, now a member of the New York Rangers, Kevin Hayes. Kevin Hayes chose to sign with the New York Rangers over the offseason. Congratulations to the Rangers on just beating out the Colorado Avalanche in the Kevin Hayes sweepstakes. That's something we'll talk about when I do my recap video after the 30 teams in 30 days are over. So, back to the Flames. Johnny Gaudreau was the best player in college, playing on the best line in college, again with Bill Arnold at center and Kevin Hayes on the right. Johnny Gaudreau is the left winger, and he is ready to play in the National Hockey League. There's no question about it. He'll go into training camp. He's expected to do well in camp, and he'll be a part of this team's top 6. Whether he's going to become the top star on the team remains to be seen. But at the very least, he's got great hands, great skating ability, and while only hulking at 5'9", 150 pounds. So a very small player, but likes to think of himself as a Theo Fleury type of player. He's obviously a bit bigger than Theo Fleury, but he's got similar hands, skates the same way, just as fast, and he's just going to be something special. I can feel it. He'll be one of the big steals of the 2011 NHL entry draft. They also still have Sven Baertschi in their system, and he has an opportunity to battle and maybe be a part of the team this year, as he'll try to fight to get back into the lineup. And then finally, who will emerge as the number 1 goaltender? That is, again, one of the big questions for the Flames. With Rito Berra now with the Colorado Avalanche, they brought in Jonas Hiller from the Anaheim Ducks. Joey McDonald left for the Montreal Canadiens. Kari Ramo's still there, so it's between Kari Ramo and Jonas Hiller. And they also have Finnish goaltender Joni Ortio in the minors. He played a few games last year. He's a guy who could eventually come up and be their number 1. So this is going to be an interesting goaltending situation and one of the more interesting tandems to watch. Because you have Jonas Hiller, who's a good goaltender, and Kari Ramo in his first season back in the NHL was not bad, but he wasn't terrible. He was solid at times, but then there were times where he just couldn't stop a puck. So, we'll see. The goaltending situation for the Flames is a bit on the rocky side right now, but it'll be one of the more interesting tandems to watch. And probably one of the big questions I have for the Flames this offseason, and it kind of goes back, it's kind of a double-sided coin question, I guess you could say. One kind of goes back to Sven Berchi a bit. Can he find himself back in the lineup? He's not on the projected roster, and it's a stacked lineup as it is. Sven Berchi plays the left wing side. And he hasn't really been in the talks at all this offseason. Last year for the Flames, Sven Berchi really did not improve on his lockout-shortened season like he was expected to. Through a career-high 26 games, only 2 goals, a career low, only 9 assists, which actually was a career high, and 11 points, which is a career high too, but he was expected to have much more than that, particularly in the goal department. He was a career low, -4, and he only generated 30 shots on goal, though he only had 6 penalty minutes. So, he's pretty much, as of right now, has fallen out of the Flames' favor, and he isn't even in the talks right now. Not in the projected lineup, not in the guys who could be also in the mix, nothing. So, Sven Berchi is a player who I think is a guy who needs to be in the lineup. He needs to be in the lineup, in my opinion. He will be in the lineup at some point. I've seen this player play, and the Swiss-born and the Switzerland native is a very talented individual. He'll be 22 on October 5th. He's only 5'11", 190 pounds, but he has quite the wrister, and he'll eventually come up and be a real effective force for this team. Whether that's going to be today or tomorrow remains to be seen. And then the other side of the coin for this question is, how are they going to replace Mike Camilleri's 26 goals? Well, this is kind of where you turn to maybe a guy like Sean Monahan. I'm pretty sure he was next on the list in goals. He had 22 last year. But Mike Camilleri's offense is going to be something that's going to be really hard to replace. Considering the Flames were not a good offensive team as it was last year, and to lose your leading goal scorer, even with that knowledge in mind, that's really hard to replace, This is going to be tough for the Flames, but I think they'll find a way to work through it. It's that kind of question that kind of links to Sven Berchi a little bit. Maybe he can come up at some point in the season and really dominate. This is going to be a big year for Berchi, whether it's in the minors or with the big club. This is pretty much his time to shine and his time to try to prove himself. So, those are some of the big questions for the Flames this offseason. As we now go and actually take a look at the projected lineup. Again, as I said, Sven Berchi not in the mix for the player, not in the main lineup, projected lineup, and also not in the mix list. So without Sven Berchi on that list, here's a look at their projected lineup. On the top line, you have Michael Backlund centering Yuri Hudler on the right and Curtis Glencross on the left. Yuri Hudler led the team last year at 54 points. It was a really good year for Yuri Hudler last year. Michael Backlund, he also had a career year last year, and he's 25 years of age. So it looks as though he's finally coming up and living up to his draft status. Through 76 games, 18 goals, 21 assists, and 39 points. A +4 rating, only 32 penalty minutes, and a career high 178 shots on goal. So everything except for plus-minus was a career high for him last year. So Michael Backlund is coming up, and he's going to be a good player for this club. He has the makings to take it to the next level and maybe be the top-line center for this team. It's going to be a big battle between him and Sean Monahan. Curtis Glencross, to me, is the big question on that line. He only had 12 goals and 12 assists last year, but he only played 38 games. So those are actually pretty good numbers for 38 games. And he generated 77 shots on goal in those games with only 12 penalty minutes, The only downside was that he was a minus 11. But he is 31 years of age. He'll be 32 in December. So his prime years are slowly but surely coming to an end. He's been with the Flames for pretty much his entire career. So, yeah, I mean, he's probably the big question mark on that line. But we'll see how it all works out. He's a good player when he's healthy. And he's more of a sniper than a playmaker. So, we'll see. On the second line now, this is pretty much the kid line for the Flames. Sean Monahan is expected to be the center with recent signing Devin Setaguchi on the right side and Johnny Gaudreau on the left side. As I said before, we kind of go back to the Camilleri question a bit. Who's going to replace his offense? Well, Sean Monahan may be the guy. He was second on the team with 22 goals last year. He was their leading goal scorer beyond Mike Camilleri. So, but the only downside about Monahan, I mean, he had 22 goals and 12 assists last year for 34 points in 75 games, which is a great start, but he was a minus 20. So he wasn't a good defensive player last year. That'll be the thing to work on for Sean Monahan, improving his offensive game and getting better defensively. Those will be the key aspects to work on this season. You know, as far as and as like I so yeah, it'll be interesting to watch for the Flames this year. As I mentioned before, Yuri Hudler was their leading point scorer and was also one of their few plus players. He was a +4. Yuri Hudler last year, his 37 assists were a career high. So it was a good year for him last year, really good year. So good job for Yuri Hudler, who is now 30 years of age. He'll be 31 on January 4th. But for this line now, Sean Monahan, he'll be relied on to be he could be relied on to be the leading goal scorer this year, and maybe even kick Michael Backlund out of the top line center spot. And Johnny Gaudreau, he's going to be one of the young upstart rookies this year. Whether he'll be Rookie of the Year or not remains to be seen, but he's going to be a heck of a player one day. He really is. The big question mark for me on that line is Devin Setaguchi. He's the veteran on that line in his prime, but again, he hasn't been the same player since he left San Jose. Last year, not a good year with the Winnipeg Jets, which is why they let him go. Maybe he'll fit on that line, and Sean Monahan and Johnny Gaudreau can help him get himself back in shape, but we'll see. It's going to be an interesting year for Devin Setaguchi. He'll be a player to watch this year. On the third line, this is an interesting third line because these are all players who have the potential to come up and be second liners or have all been second liners at one point in their career. You have Matt Stajan centering David Jones on the right and Mason Raymond on the left. Matt Stajan, for him last year, it was a good year for him last year. Definitely his best year in a Flames uniform when playing a full season with the Flames. He had 14 goals last year. He's only 30 years of age. He'll be 31 on December 19th. Last year, as far as plus-minus is concerned, he was a minus 13, which is a career low for him. But offensively, it was his best year as a Flame through 63 games. 14 goals, 19 assists, and 33 points, and 70 shots on goal, while only having 42 penalty minutes. So it was a good year for him last year. He hasn't been as good of a player he was during the 2009-2010 season, and he was formerly a top-line center when he was with the Toronto Maple Leafs. But in the year he split between the Maple Leafs and the Flames, that was his best year. He had a career-high 19 goals that year, a career high 30. He had 38 assists that year, and he had a career high 57 points. So, while also having 132 shots on goal. So, it was a good year then for Stajan. And then, of course, the next 3 seasons were bad years for him. But this past year was a good year for him. He had a lot of goals. He had more goals than he's had in a long time, which tells you that maybe Stajan's turning a corner and maybe getting his career back in shape, which is a great sign. Mason Raymond, obviously, great year with the Maple Leafs last year. Kind of a shame to see him leave. I thought the Maple Leafs were going to re-sign him because he did have such a good year. Maybe it was because of his lack of analytics that they let him go, but we'll see. I will see how he fares for the Flames. I think he's a great addition for their bottom 6. David Jones is probably the big question mark for me. He hasn't been the same player since the 2011-12 season. The lockout Jordan year was a really bad year for him, and last season he played 48 games, only 9 goals and 8 assists and 17 points, while generating 104 shots on goal. But he only had 10 penalty minutes, and he was a +1. He was one of their plus players, so that was good. That's good news. But David Jones was formerly a top 6 player, more of a goal scorer than a playmaker. He's not going to get a lot of points, but he is expected to get a lot of goals, at least. 27 goals was his career high in 2010-2011. He was a key member of the Colorado Avalanche's top 6 when he was there. So, David Jones is a guy who I think has the potential to be a better player this year. He got his number changed this year. He no longer wears the number 54. He now wears number 19. So with Blair Jones gone, so David Jones, he'll have. I think. He may not have the expectations right now, but I think he could be better. He has more potential than what he's shown in recent years. So he's going to be a big player to watch this year. And then on the 4th line, Joe Colburn, centering Lance Boma on the right and Brandon Bollig on the left, with Paul Byron as the 13th guy and Brian McGrattan as the 14th guy. So that's now a very physical line now when you add Brandon Bollig. Paul Byron had a good year last year. Through 47 games played, 7 goals, 14 assists, and 21 points, all career highs. A +6 rating career high, 27 penalty minutes career high, and 46 shots on goal career high. I thought he played pretty good last year, while posing as a depth player. He's only 25, so he has the potential to come up and play a bigger role for the Flames. He's projected as an extra guy for now, but I think he's going to come to training camp with a mission to prove himself. Brian McGrattan, he's been in the league a while. He'll be 33 on September 2nd. He played 76 games last year, 4 goals, 4 assists, and 8 points, a -4 rating. But he did have a career-high 79 shots on goal. As a matter of fact, everything was a career high for him. But then, of course, he had 100 penalty minutes. This guy's been in the league a while. But this was definitely the most NHL action he's seen in a single season. He was a big part of the Flames last year. He's a physical player, but he takes a lot of penalty minutes, and that's what could make him more of a scratch. He's not a main player. Brandon Bollig, I think, is a better option than him, and as is Lance Boma, but Lance Boma needs to get re-signed. He had a good year last year. I talked about his statistics before. He had a good year last year. He can play center. He can play center or wing. He's a left-handed shot, but he could play the right wing side this coming year. Brandon Bollig, we all know what he did last year. He's going to be an upgrade from Brian McGrattan. And then Joe Colburn. A former first-round pick from the 2008 NHL draft, the 16th overall pick by the Boston Bruins, still got a lot of youth. He's 24 years of age. He'll be 25 on January 30th, so he still has room to grow. Hasn't panned out yet. He hasn't exactly lived up to his draft status yet, but last year he broke out, came to the Flames from the Toronto Maple Leafs, played 80 out of 82 games, had 10 goals, 18 assists, and 28 points, and had 80 shots on goal while only obtaining 34 penalty minutes, though he was a minus 17. He was a minus 17, so he wasn't a very good defensive player last year, but he's a good proven option for the fourth line. He has proved himself, and he'll be a mainstay on the team. Great option for the fourth line, and actually has the potential to take it higher. He's still growing, and he is a former first-round pick, so he has the potential to take it higher and have a better role, and have a better role on the team. So, overall, I think this is actually even without Mike Camilleri, I think they've done a good job this offseason because, again, then you also have Sam Bennett and Marcus Granlund in the mix. Marcus Granlund played a few games last year and was really good. Sam Bennett, the 4th overall pick from this past year, he's going to come into training camp. He's not expected to make it, but then they also have Sven Baertschi, again, as I mentioned before, who has the potential to kick someone out of the lineup. This is a good forward situation for the Flames to be in. Even though their offense may not be good this year, whether their offense is good or not this year, it's a good situation to be in with your forwards. They have a lot of youngsters all coming up that are going to battle for spots, and they have guys, and they still have some veterans as well. So I like this forward group. I think it's a very underrated forward group. I don't think this is where the problems lie for the Flames, to be real honest with you. I think this might even be the Flames' biggest strength when it comes down to it. So, it's a very deep group of forwards, especially at center, when you consider Michael Backlund, Sean Monahan, Matt Stage, and Joe Colburn, Paul Byron, who had a very good year last year. Lance Boma can play center. So, it's a very good situation to be in if you're the Flames, and I would be proud of what they've managed to build up front. Oh, yeah, and Marcus Granlund, he's a center, so a very good situation for the Flames to be in. So I like their forward group. On defense, the defense to me, I have some questions about it, but I think it's not the worst defense core I've ever seen. Actually, I think it's a pretty decent defense core now when I really look at it. When I really look at it, pretty decent defense group. Especially their top pair with their captain, Mark Giordano, and TJ Brody. TJ Brody is 24 years of age, and he has proven himself quite nicely, and he's become a much better player than anyone anticipated him to become. There were a lot of questions about him playing on the top defense pair, but he was fared just fine. He was even in the plus-minus rating, and he only had 20 penalty minutes and generated 104 shots on goal, while obtaining 4 goals, 27 assists, and 31 points through 81 games. He's more of a shutdown defenseman, but he put up some good numbers last year. He proved his worth, and this top pairing was one of the most underrated, if not the most underrated, defense pairs in the National Hockey League. Mark Giordano is so underrated for what he can do. He led the team with a plus 12 rating last year on a team that wasn't very good defensively. So, a lot of props for this defense pair. Mark Giordano, again, he's a left-handed shot, but could play the right side this year. But played the right side last year. Will play the right side again. Brody will man the left side. Then on the second pair, you got Ladislav Schmid and Dennis Weidman. Ladislav Schmid was acquired mid-season by the Flames from their arch rivals, the Edmonton Oilers. It was a very rare trade between the two arch rivals. That was another player that the Oilers got rid of last year that I completely forgot about. But he's a very good shutdown defenseman. Um, has the potential to be better. The only reason his career plus minus hasn't been good has been because of the teams he's been playing on. So his plus minus doesn't really judge how his career has gone because he's been on such bad teams. He's a very good shutdown defenseman, loves to get in the lane and block shots. Former 9th overall pick by the Anaheim Ducks in 2004. He's 28 years of age. He'll be 29 on February 1st, so he's still in his prime. So he is a top 4 defenseman. And then Dennis Wideman, Dennis Wideman, he hasn't proven to be the big signing that the Flames were bargained for when they signed him from the Washington Capitals during the lockout-shortened year. After having a great career year with the Washington Capitals in 2011-2012, last couple of years, 2 straight years, he's played 46 games for the Flames, which in the lockout season was all but 2. And here's how his statistics have gone. In the lockout-shortened year, 6 goals, 16 assists, 22 points, -9, 12 penalty minutes, 94 shots on goal. Last year, in a full season, in 46 games played, 4 goals, 17 assists, 21 points, a -15, 18 penalty minutes, and 102 shots on goal. So he hasn't been the offensive threat on the blue line that the Flames have bargained for. He's one of the more overpaid defensemen in the game, and he's not even a top pair guy like they've expected him to be. He has a big shot from the point, but there's more to his potential than what he's shown. He's going to be on the top 4, or he'll be playing with Ladislav Schmid, but there's room for him to grow. There really is. And then on the third, there's room for him to play better. And then, of course, on the third pair, Chris Russell and Derek Engelland, one of the more overpaid defensemen in the game, one of the worst signings this offseason, coming over from the Pittsburgh Penguins. And then Mark Kundari is the 7th guy. He's going to be a good player in the future. Undrafted. He was part of the Jay Bouwmeester deal. He was acquired in that deal from the St. Louis Blues. But he's going to be a good player. Whether it's going to be this season for him to come up and play full-time or next season remains to be seen. But good, I think he'll be a good 7th option for the Flames. And then as far as that third pairing is concerned, it's interesting. Chris Russell's a good player. He had a good year last year. It was his career year. It was a breakout year for him, though he did have a -11 rating. That was because he was playing on a bad team. Through 68 games, career high, 7 goals, 22 assists, and 29 points. Only 15 penalty minutes and 109 shots on goal. He's more of the offensive defenseman on that defense pair. Derek Engelland will be the shutdown force, and he adds an edge to that blue line. So it's going to be interesting. Mark Kundari will look to kick one of these guys out of the defense. To me, it would most likely be Derek Engelland if he doesn't pan out to be what they bargained for. But they also have Tyler Wotherspoon and Ryan Culkin in the system, both guys who could be ready to play as soon as this year. Culkin, he's only 20. Wotherspoon, he is 21. So Wotherspoon played 14 games last year and was pretty decent. More of a shutdown defenseman than an offensive guy, but he's very smart. Very, very smart player. So I like their defense. I like the situation they have on defense. It may not be as good as the forward group, but it's still solid in my opinion. I think it'll be a bit better this year. They'll be more experienced. They'll be a lot more experienced. And then in goal, this is where the big questions come in. They have Jonas Hiller projected as their starter and Kari Ramo projected as their backup. It'll be one of the more interesting tandems to watch this year, but the goaltending is their biggest question. Can Jonas Hiller put the bad parts of last season behind him and be a fully consistent goaltender? And can Kari Ramo come in and be just as good as he was in the KHL? He's 28 years of age. Last year he had 17 wins, 15 losses, and 4 overtime losses with 2 shutouts, a .265 goals against average, and .911 save percentage through 40 games played. So this is going to be a big year for both of these guys. You know, they're both really going to have to come in and prove their worth this year. They really are. So it's going to be interesting to watch. And then they also have Yoni Ordio, who I talked about earlier. He's going to be a good goalie in the future. Whether it's going to be this year or the following year remains to be seen. He is 23. He may need more development time, though, because it takes longer for goaltenders to develop. But through 9 games played, he showed promise last year. 4 wins, 4 losses, no overtime losses, no shutouts. .251 goals against average and .891 save percentage. So the save percentage wasn't great, but he really proved his worth. He was really solid when he came into play, a .500 record. So he showed some promise when he came up last year. He could be their starter in the future. He tries to be more like Mika Kiprasov. Mika Kiprasov was his idol growing up. He was from the same town. So he wants to become just like Mika Kiprasov, if not better. So that's what the lineup looks like for the Flames as we now take a look at their top 10 prospects. And I gotta say, I thought were not going to be able to match what they managed to build last year's prospect pool. Last year, the Flames had one of the deepest, if not the deepest, prospect pool in the league. This year, they have not only matched it, but maybe even bettered it. They have bettered their prospect pool from last year. It's really amazing what they've managed to do. Honestly, I was a little bit surprised to see Sam Bennett at number 1 rather than Johnny Gaudreau. I mean, I guess it makes sense because he was their fourth overall pick. Johnny Gaudreau is number 2. Bennett just barely beat him out, but you know what? It really doesn't change the fact that these guys pretty much are both the number 1. It just came down to Bennett being a 4th overall pick and Gaudreau being a 4th rounder. That's pretty much what it came down to. Marcus Granlund, who can play center or left wing, he's number 3. He, of course, is the younger brother of Minnesota Wild center Michael Granlund. Mark Jankowski, another center / left winger, he's number 4. Emile Poirier, number 5. Yoni Ordio is number 6. He could be ready next year. Morgan Klimchuk, this guy's going to be real good. He's number 7. Michael Furland is number 8. He was probably the one guy on this list who I didn't know too much about. Number 9, Patrick Seeloff. He's going to be a real good shutdown defenseman. And John Gillies, number 10. He'll be a starting goaltender one of these days. But if John Gillies is your number 10, after being the starter for Team USA at the 2014 World Junior Championships last year and playing pretty well despite a 5th place finish, that's saying a lot. And I think their prospect pool 10 times deeper than their arch rivals, the Edmonton Oilers. And it's going to be interesting to look at the rest of the Pacific Division going from here because this is the deepest prospect pool I've seen so far. It's even deeper. I mean, it combats that of the Tampa Bay Lightning. Which one is better, is hard to say. Even the Columbus Blue Jackets are up there as well, as are the Chicago Blackhawks. But the Flames, what they have managed to build in their system, is just mind-boggling. That's always the positive of being one of the worst teams year in and year out. You develop good prospects. But there are just so many impressive guys, and it was a really tough choice to say who my number one guy is. Obviously, you can't deny Sam Bennett. He is going to be one heck of an all-around player. But to me, it really came down to two guys, Johnny Gaudreau and Morgan Klimchuk was really another guy who I've really been thinking a lot about. He is a guy who is going to be, he'll be one of the draft, he'll be a late first-round steal. He's going to be one heck of a sniper. He probably won't be for another couple of years, but when he comes up, he's going to be a force. He'll be one of the big steals of the first round from the 2013 draft for sure. But in my personal opinion, when it really comes down to it, the prospect in their system that really is the highlight for me. There was really no contest when it comes down to it. It's their number 2 prospect, left winger, Johnny Gaudreau. And I'm not just saying it, and honestly, this is one of those prospects in my mind should have been number 1 rather than Sam Bennett. I think Sam Bennett was more of a number 2. To me, it really just came down to who was drafted higher in their respective draft year. That's all it came down to. To me, Johnny Gaudreau is their number 1 prospect. Not just in my opinion, but that should have been their number 1 prospect on NHL.com. To do what he did in college last year and then come up for the final game of the season for the Calgary Flames and score, that's pretty impressive. Again, in that final game of the year with the Calgary Flames, that one goal was his only point and his only shot on goal while playing really well in the game. But for Boston College of the Hockey East Division last year, through just 40 games played, 36 goals, 44 assists, and 80 points while winning the Hobey Baker Award. Former 4th-round pick at number 104th overall of the 2011 NHL entry draft. He's only 5'9", 150 pounds. Born in Salem, New Jersey, but raised in Carneys Point, New Jersey. He signed a 3-year entry-level deal in April. He's 21 years old. And another thing he did in college was match Paul Kariya's Hockey East record with a 31-game point streak last year, scoring 29 goals and 61 points over that stretch. Just absolutely impressive. He is going to be one impressive prospect. He's ready to play in the NHL this year. And in my mind, he could be a superstar in this league. He could end up being the next Jerome McGinley on their team. He just has so much skill, so much talent. And he is just going to be something special. It really is. I think he should have been their number 1 prospect. Regardless, he is their number 1 prospect to me. There's no looking past Johnny Gaudreau and what he can do and what he's going to be able to do. So Johnny Gaudreau is my top prospect. Now, the player on the Calgary Flames who I think has to be better this season in order for the Flames to be a better team and maybe even make themselves a bubble team and give themselves a playoff shot. You know, if Sven Baertschi were on the projected roster, I probably would have said Sven Baertschi, but he's not, so I can't say Sven Baertschi. Otherwise, he would have been the player. But because he's not, I have to choose someone else. And the player who I think I would choose, honestly, this is actually a pretty tough choice because you got Curtis Glencross, who you would hope to be better after a rough, injury-prone season. Matt Stajan, he hasn't been the same player since 09-10, but he really improved last year. So it's not him. Mason Raymond was good last year for the Maple Leafs. I'd probably say it's a really tough choice. David Jones and Devin Setaguchi were both thoughts for me. But then when it really comes down to it, after really, really thinking about it and really thinking about it for a long and hard time, I'd say, honestly, you could look at the goaltending and say Jonas Hiller and Kari Ramo all you want. Jonas Hiller, when he was, because he was bad during the final stretch of the season last year. So you could definitely say Jonas Hiller, despite his 29 wins last year. But when it really comes down to it, in my opinion, and you could also say Derek Engelland because of the contract he signed and because of the fact that he didn't even play a playoff game last year. However, when it really comes down to it for me, the player, in my opinion, who needs to be better for the Flames, in my personal opinion, after really looking at it, has to be defenseman Dennis Wideman. Why Dennis Wideman? Well, he's 31 years old, so he's relatively young. He won't be 32 till March 20. He still has a couple years left in his prime. 6 foot, 200 pounds, right-handed shot. But when the Flames signed him back in the lockout shortened year, he was signed to a big contract, to a lot of years, and a lot of money. And in his first 2 years of his contract, he hasn't panned out. He hasn't been the same player that he was in 2011-12 with the Washington Capitals when he was the best offensive defenseman on their team. Now, again, he is an offensive defenseman, so his plus-minus probably is not going to be that great. Generally it's not going to be that great. Obviously, it was very good during 2008-2009 with the Boston Bruins, but it was the Boston Bruins. It's always going to be good when you're playing for the Boston Bruins. So, that was actually his best year, 2008-2009. That was his best season. He had 13 goals, 37 assists, 50 points through 79 games. A career all career highs. The goals were tied for such. The 50 points is a career high. The plus 32 is a career high. He had only 34 penalty minutes that year, and he had 169 shots on goal. So he was great. And then in the playoffs that year, through 11 games, he didn't have any goals, but he had 7 assists, a plus 3 rating, and 28 shots on goal while only obtaining 4 penalty minutes. He was huge that year, and he hasn't been the same since. Though he was really good with the Washington Capitals in 2011-2012. He was their best offensive defenseman. Since coming over to the Flames, he has not been good at all. And he needs to start living up to the contract he signed this season. He needs to be one of their better offensive defensemen this year, if not their best offensive defenseman this year. He has the potential to put up more points than Mark Giordano. He's not a better overall. He won't be a better overall player than Mark Giordano. Giordano's a better overall player, but he has the potential to put up more points. So yeah, that is the player who I think needs to be better for the Flames. If they're going to be good this year, Dennis Wideman has to be the player who needs to be better for them this year. Overall, are the Flames a playoff team? Well, I think they're headed in the right direction, but no, they're not a playoff team. They're not ready to be a playoff team. They're still probably going to finish on the bottom of not just the Pacific Division, but the Eastern Conference as well. And they'll have a shot, and they'll probably be in the conversations to have a shot at either Connor McDavid or Jack Eichel this year. But if not, then either Noah Hannafin or Oliver Killington could be good consolation prizes. Those are the top 2 defensemen for the upcoming draft, and they're both going to be stars on the blue line. And that's an area where the Flames need a lot of help. So, no, I don't think they're going to be a playoff team, but I think they are heading in the right direction. I think from an individual standpoint, they're going to have a good season. From a team standpoint, probably not. But from an individual standpoint, there's a lot of players on their team are going to be well improved this year, and they're going to be good. But overall, no. The Calgary Flames are not a playoff team this year. And that'll do it for episode 157 of Hockey on the Spot. Thank you all for joining me today. Be sure to tune in again tomorrow when we talk about the Vancouver Canucks. So until then, this has been Hockey on the Spot with Brandon Barenfeld. I'm Brandon Barenfeld. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all again tomorrow. Thank you all, and have a great night.